Hello, my name is Laura Maria Caldarone, and this is The Long Haul, an online series on long COVID. With us from Austria, we have Michael Vogt. Hi, Michael.
Hello.
Thank you for joining us, for being here. And first of all, the reason you are here in this episode is because you have a loved one that has long COVID. So before you start telling me a little bit about her and about the long COVID journey that she's been in and you have been with her, tell me a little bit about yourself.
A pretty active person. Maybe that's also an important aspect of what the impact of COVID had on us. So I do a lot of sports. We used to go hiking a lot. I still do that, but now by myself with friends. And yeah, so before we were just like we were both finished with studying, and Maarte was also finishing a switch of jobs into massage, and she also almost finished her studies. So she was about to like open her own shop or start working somewhere, and then yeah, it all crashed down because of COVID, and that was quite heavy. Let's say it like that. Yeah.
So you obviously have a very good understanding of how long COVID has changed her. So if you can maybe tell me a little bit of how she used to be and what changes you've seen.
Yeah, I mean, the most important change is like her energy level. It's way different. So sometimes, yeah, she's not able to do anything at all in daily life. Like, you have some plans, you want to do something, and then yes, there's some days where it's just not possible. And that was pretty much the beginning of long COVID, where she had really big crash, and yeah, she was just kind of stuck in bed and sick, and yeah, and then it kept getting better little by little, but still, you're not able to do much at all. And I think that's the biggest difference, and the whole thing to cope with that. Yeah, I mean, on the emotional side, it's really, sad to see that she's not, she's really struggling and fighting to get better, and yeah, you're not able to do anything about that. The only thing I can do sometimes is just let her rest, and that's sometimes really difficult because you want to do something and do things together, and you cannot help directly. You can just help her resting. I think that's really also difficult. Yeah, I think from the outside, many people won't see what big impact it really has on someone's life. I see her every day, and because of COVID now, I'm much more at home than I normally would be. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing in perspective that I can see that other people don't see. When she's talking to somebody, she puts all her effort into that. But people she's talking to don't see her after that. Sometimes in the beginning that was a whole day, sometimes it was so so exhausting to do an interview that she would be sick for a day. Now it's a little bit better, but still it's it's exhausting, you know. And I think that's what most people don't see, but it's there. And yeah, I think also what most people don't see about long COVID is that people that are sick, they stay at home, you know, they cut themselves off from their environment a little bit because it's too much, too many impressions, too much to yeah, you cannot deal with all these impressions all the time. Yeah, so you don't see the long COVID people, and that's I think also a big problem why it's not underestimated, but it doesn't get enough attention.
There's not enough awareness.
Yeah, and it's gonna be a big problem because if it's 10 or 20% of everybody that gets COVID, then maybe 5% have long COVID. That's a lot of people. That's going to be a really big impact on society. Yeah.
And we don't know for how long.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And so, yeah, very important that there's more research on it. But as I've seen now, there's not so many funds. So.
With us from Austria, we have Maarte Preller. Hi, Maarte.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm doing good at the moment.
So first of all, thank you for taking the time for the interview. And obviously you are here because you have long COVID. And maybe we can start with you telling us a little bit about yourself.
Okay. I'm 33 at the moment. I'm originally from Holland. I moved to Austria around 7 years ago. And I'm a physical therapist, so a massage therapist. And I had COVID in March 2020, right at the beginning, and long COVID since August last year. So 1 year and
Too long.
I think 16 months and counting. Yeah.
And so you had COVID in March 2020 and then long COVID in August. Can you tell me a little bit, how was the transition and how did you know there was a transition?
I was sick for a long time with acute COVID. So I only was released from quarantine at the end of April. And I was still, I've noticed that there was improvement, but I was still a bit sick at that time, like really not healthy at all. So I really needed almost, I would say at least 2 weeks more to get back on my feet, be able to move again a little bit. And then let's say, so middle of May until middle of July, so 2 months, I think, I was symptom-free and improving steadily, like feeling healthy. And I mean, of course, my my stamina had reduced because of being sick, obviously. But I was building that up and I felt okay. So I had around 2 months of really healthy time between that. And it's something that I hear from a lot of patients, a lot of other patients as well, that they have large gaps between the acute infection and long COVID. And it started for me in July, very gradually, very sneaky, just sort of increasing over time. as I kept ignoring the signals and I kept trying to push my body to continue functioning. So for me, I think the breaking point came in August when my body just really couldn't do it anymore. But it was there beforehand. I couldn't see it. I didn't know what it was.
And in the acute time of the disease, when you had COVID, you weren't asymptomatic. You did have symptoms.
Oh, yeah.
Can you just give us an idea? Because, you know, we keep on hearing still now the categories of people that get COVID are mild or severe or hospitalized or, of course, unfortunately, death. What was
and permanently disabled?
And there's more, right? So tell
There's more,
me a bit about your COVID.
Well, in hindsight, as how they define it now, I'm pretty sure I had a moderate case, not mild. But COVID is a tricky thing, and for me as well, in the beginning, it was really very clear that if you were not like really having your oxygen levels drop very low and not being able to stand and talk and walk, of course you belong in hospital. But they were very clear in saying, okay, we have to reserve capacity for the people who really, it's a life and death situation. And in hindsight, I was a moderate case. I had pneumonia. I was sick for a long time, but COVID is tricky. It fluctuates, and it's in some ways that reminds me a little bit of long COVID as well, in that it comes in waves. And I had, in those 6 weeks that I was quarantined, I had moments where I was feeling okay, and I think at least 5 times in that period, I have had the feeling like I've beat this. I'm done with this. I'm getting better. I'm improving. And then a few days later, it went downhill again, and I had to, prone myself to be able to continue breathing. So in that sense, it's very confusing. And I had a lot of moments where I was doing good, and also a few moments where I was doing really, really bad, and also unsure how it would continue. I was very afraid to have to go to hospital, and it came to that 2 times, also because they couldn't send a doctor to examine me, and so you don't have any other options as either telephone with your doctor, and your doctor has to somehow distinguish or define how your situation is and if it needs a hospital admission or not. So my doctor in both cases that it happened was like, it doesn't sound good, so best thing to do is just go to hospital and see how it's looking, because it's the only way I could be examined in any possibility. And both times I was lucky enough to be sent home again. I know many people also experience being sent home, although they really felt the need to stay, like they were pretty sure and convinced that it would have been better if they had been in hospital. I don't know. At that point, the situation was so new and so chaotic and difficult for all parties involved. I am not sure that they knew enough to have made a positive difference in me being there. At home, I was at least in my own space. I had my partner to take care of me, and I had a lot of distraction, which helped just passing the time, and that was also good.
And long COVID, obviously, when you started having long COVID, it wasn't yet known even today. I mean, end of December 2021, and there's still a lot of people around the world that don't know what it is, don't understand what it is, countries that don't acknowledge it. But back in August 2020, it was still early. It was around the time that the World Health Organization started acknowledging it. People were talking about it on social media, even before it had an actual name. But did you understand immediately, okay, this is because of my COVID, or did you think it was something else? Did you make a connection, or what, how did it go?
In the beginning, I think I was very conflicted at the beginning, at that first stage, because I was experiencing a lot of symptoms, and these long COVID rumors and news stories were very limited and very in Austria, at least, they weren't as present, and I was also really not actively looking for them online. And then when I had my first real breakdown from long COVID, I was very conscious also of not wanting to confuse my mind and my body with ideas about what this could be. It was clear to me, I am sick, something is very wrong, and how my body is responding and behaving is not normal compared to how it was before. I did think, okay, I had COVID, maybe it has something to do with that, but I also thought it can be
Anything.
millions of other reasons. I just don't know. And I'm usually, and still, I am the kind of person who thinks if I don't know, I'm not going to worry about it. I'm just going to make sure I find out. So in the first weeks when I was ill and just communicating that to my family and friends as well, some people started sending me articles about long COVID patients with long-term effects and disability. And there were still, you know, the term long COVID was not really used that much. And those things really upset me. And I was very also hesitant to read those things because I was determined to stick to, don't think about what you don't know. Just go to your doctor's appointments, just get checked out, and then you can worry about it. But I didn't want to influence myself with reading too much about it. At that point, I was very much not convinced I could decide what I had. and so in the first few months, in the Austrian healthcare system, it works so that you go to your GP, you complain about what your issues are, and they redirect you to specialists if they see it as necessary. And my doctor did take me seriously at the beginning. I just told her, I have all these symptoms, I cannot explain it. It was, for me, it was sudden onset, like from one day to the next, not being able to do anything. And she did take me very seriously. And then after the first few specialists who could not find any reasonable cause for this in their standard examinations, like they check for heart problems, they check for tumors, they check for markers in your blood that something is really wrong, and they couldn't see it. So then they all said, okay, it's time for a psychiatrist. Which by that point, I mean, the first examinations, they took almost 3 months. And you get a lot of experience with doctors and seeing them at appointments and hearing how they are slowly going in that direction. So I expected it to come. But by then I was very convinced that, I was very sure that this was not a psychological issue, because I mean, I know myself really well. I've been in therapy. I know what mental issues for normally mentally healthy people, like if you have a case of depression or anxiety or something, if something in your life is triggering you, and I know how that feels. And nothing about that was present, not before and not during this time. It was really a physical thing for me. So then after my specialist told me, okay, you need to see a shrink. But that was the point so end of October, November, that I started thinking, okay, it's time to do my own research, because apparently they're not going to do it for me. And this was also the point where my GP said, okay, we've examined everything, she can't do anything more for me. And at that time, I mean, I was barely sleeping. I could not do anything. I could only sit at home, wait for the day to pass me by, and then lay awake at night, worrying about this thing never going away. So I was not really in a good place. Mentally, I was still very strong and hopeful that there would be something that somebody could do. But it was clear to me, okay, on my doctors, I cannot rely on them for this, for help. So that's where I started my own research. I've been to university. I know how to go through literature and research databases and to find my way in those. And those articles, the first few about long COVID, they helped. Also giving me a kind of an idea of what to expect and what to expect, such a joke. But it gave me some sense of direction. And I had also never expected that, like you said, there would be this period of good health where I would feel fine. And I really feel like I've beaten this thing and I've come out better than before. And I don't know, I was excited after COVID, in the sense of I've been through it and I survived and I'm okay. I was happy about that. So no, for me, it was a very, very big surprise that this could happen. And also, you can have a very good health system as first world rich country. And still, if doctors are confronted with something they don't know anything about, they will leave you alone as soon as they can. In most cases, there's no, I think for long COVID patients, the relationship between patients and their physicians and medical personnel is a very tricky one, because many of us have been gaslighted and have had very distressing experiences with medical staff. And still also we desperately need them. So it's a very complicated relationship. I have a lot of understanding and respect for healthcare workers, especially in this situation. It's, I mean, they are bearing so many of the consequences of this pandemic, both in that they are disproportionately long COVID patients, because so many got infected, and also because they are working nonstop to take care of all people who still manage to infect themselves. Not that I want to say anybody does it on purpose, but it's just they are not getting the support they need, and I see that. And at the same time, you really see the fault in a medical system that relies on doctors knowing protocols and nothing else. Because what I and so many others of us had needed was a doctor who said, I don't know what's wrong with you, but I'm interested and I will find out with you together what this is. And even if we don't find out for a long time, I am here.
And
I'm doing this with you. And those are very, very hard to find. So that's, I think, an experience which a lot of patients have. We still hear about it every day in our support group. It took a long time to find somebody who could help me, who could try to help me as well. And I was in that, at that point, the doctor that I landed with was still not being completely overrun with patients, because it was at the beginning of people noticing they have long COVID. I mean, if you get sick with these symptoms, you are confused, you have to do a lot of diagnostics and stuff, but it takes a long time until you realize I am sick and I'm not getting better. So what we see now is we at least in Austria, we've had a very big wave of infections in the last month. It's the reason we went in lockdown again. And the numbers are higher than ever before, than they ever were. So it's not great, let's put it like that. But the result, the thing is, in Austria, long COVID is not being registered at all. There's nobody who's counting how many long COVID cases there are. The codes used in our health system to register diseases are not being used consistently, not being used well enough, not being used correctly, and they're not being tracked. So we have no idea how many long COVID patients we have. And then based on the many cases we had in the past month, we already also have no idea how many long COVID cases we will have, because we will find out only in like 4 or 5 months, when these people notice I'm not getting better, I'm getting sicker and sicker each day, I can do less and less, I cannot work anymore, I cannot take care of my children. And this this becomes visible so much later than it is caused, that we need from our politicians, from people who make decisions about this pandemic and the strategy we want to go, to be aware that there is a future ahead of us, and that many of us cannot take part in that future if we do not get what we need, which is care and accessibility to care and strategy to deal with this. Because at this point, at least in Austria, people are aware that long COVID exists, but it is sort of being handled as if it's just a small group of people who are just a little bit more tired than usual, and it will go away on its own. So, yeah.
It's unfortunate, because even what you're saying, that yes, in Austria now there's people understand that there's something called long COVID. One thing is acknowledging that there's something called long COVID. Another thing is acknowledging that there will be long COVID if there are cases. So yes, different studies done at different times with different type of data are saying different percentages, but still, even if you take the smallest percentage, it's still high enough to make you think that, you know, more cases you have, more cases of long COVID you will have.
Yeah.
Just like COVID, you're young, because remember back beginning of last year, one of the things that was said repeatedly was that if you were young and healthy, you didn't have to worry about this pandemic. And look, you did have it. And just with the same with long COVID, there's no categories, right? It's not that you say if
Doesn't
I do this, this,
discriminate.
and that
Yeah.
exactly, then I won't have it, or it'll be okay, it'll be mild.
Yeah. No, there's nothing you can do to protect yourself from this except wear your mask, social distance, get vaccinated if you can, get your booster shots as well, and just try to handle this thing responsibly, not only for yourself, but also for your environment. In our support group, which I founded in January this year, in the past few weeks, I have met children with long COVID, like 6-year-olds, 8-year-olds, 12-year-olds. It's horrible. It's really horrible. And these kids they have been sick since 9 months, 10 months, a year. And we keep hearing reports about people talking about long COVID and people being cured, or people recovering on their own after a certain amount of time. And I think people really, really underestimate what this looks like and what recovered or improved really means.
Yeah.
I am improved at this point because I managed to get down and up my stairs 2 times a day instead of 1, compared to not at all before. And that is my improvement after 16 months. So I think when we talk about long COVID, we really have to be aware of the fact that news reports are very limited, very generalized, and also many people who are talking about this topic, like here in Austria, for example, rehab directors, like rehab doctors who are leading rehab clinics. Of course, they also have a benefit from reporting that they can cure this. But we know by now that at least COVID patients that have post-exertional malaise, exercise is not something that's going to cure us, not at all. In most cases, actually, it's a risk that you submit patients to, because many patients have also had a rehab experience that set them back further than they were before starting rehab. So this whole illusion that we have that this is something that will go away and it's something where we have a solution for this is very dangerous, because it really it makes it seem like a very innocent consequence of this disease, and it's not. I always tell people not being careful or minimizing the risk of this. I always tell them, you know, you have a good chance that you will have a mild infection, that you will have no long-term consequences. In your case, maybe you are lucky, but it's a gamble and you don't know, there's no guarantees. So if you take those risks, be prepared to give up your life essentially for a year or longer. You will be isolated, you will be stuck in a body that can't do what you wanted to do. You will lose friends over this. You will have fights with your family who will not understand what you're going through. You will probably lose your job, because who's going to accept sick leave of a year or more? You will get into a lot of trouble with your insurance, with your doctors. You will be possibly ridiculed when you go to doctor's appointments or to the ER, when you have symptoms you can't explain and they can't detect. And that's what is waiting for you if you make this choice and if you take this risk and if it goes unlucky. If you're lucky, everything is good. But I mean, do you want to take that chance? At a certain point in my disease, I was so frustrated and so also, I don't know, hopeless maybe. I couldn't see any way out of this. I really had the thought, like, if anybody would tell me, if you do this, you're cured, like in the category of if you would give up your legs or if you would give up an arm and you would be cured by that, I would shake on that immediately, because this and I don't want to limit or disregard the gravity of such a thing happening to you, losing a limb, losing the ability to walk. I don't want to make it sound like that is not a big thing and a very horrible thing to experience. But this feeling of being inside a body who refuses to do anything, who is not able to go on walks, to have a phone conversation, to concentrate on things that you love doing, is a horrible feeling. It really is. You are essentially locked inside a prison. And every time we had a lockdown in Austria, I was sort of happy because I felt like, at least at that point, I was not that far removed from everybody else's experience. So that's my takeaway from this. Yeah.
One thing that I have a feeling people don't really realize is when you ask someone, okay, how long have you had long COVID? And they tell you, I've had it for 18 months. Mm-hmm. And you say, wow, that is so long. Wow. Yes, it's very long. Yes, it is awful. But that person has it 18 months because it is the 18th month right now. But as time goes on, ask me in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, there's no data, there's no study, there's no promise that is going to say, no, long COVID is maximum 3 years. So then the person that's in the 18th month is like, okay, just a little bit longer. No.
Yeah. And this unclarity and mystery about it is a very difficult thing to deal with, for all people, regardless of what age you are, in what situation you are. For me, for example, when I realized, okay, I'm not getting really that much better, and I don't know if it's ever going to be okay, if I'm ever going to get back to where I was before, or anything that sort of comes in that direction. You know, I'm not sure if I'm ever going to be able to have children, because in this case, I would not be able to care for them. And this realization that something that you had planned, like you know, they say life, you make plans and life laughs about it, because it always that's very true. But as a normal healthy person, I had planned to get to have children right about this time. And previously, before COVID, I had not thought that anything would sort of like get in the way of that. Of course, you always know children are no guarantee. There are people who cannot have children, and this is a factor it's always there. Of course, you know, until you try, you don't know if it's gonna work or not. But that was something I knew before, and that was okay. And now I'm really at the moment where I have to say, I'm not sure if I'm ever in the position that I can make that decision, that I can say, okay, I'm going to do that, because having children and not being able to take care of them, what would that look like? For me, that's not an option. There's so many people who had really active and for them very important lives and activities that suddenly you don't know if you can ever do those again. So it's a life-changing thing. and not really in a good way. I think there's, of course, I am a silver linings kind of person, and I try to always find things in every day that I can enjoy, that I can be thankful for, and they are there for sure. But it's a humbling thing.
And on that note, my last two questions, they kind of perfectly flow from this.
Yeah.
The first one is, how could you right now help others? For me would be if you could give a message to someone that, you know, just figured out that has long COVID or is quite new with the condition of long COVID. What tips would you give them, or what recommendation, or what message would you give this person? Something that, you know, can help them.
I think the first one would be trust in yourself. Don't let that be shaken by anything or anyone, because it's the best thing that you have. And you need it to rely on yourself. So even if it gets so difficult and you don't know what to do anymore, trust your gut, trust your feeling, and trust that what you experience is your reality, and it's valid in that sense. And the second one would be find a support group as quick as you can. And ask for help. Ask somebody to help you if you are overwhelmed or not able to because of energy problems. By making doctor's appointments, by going online and going to these support groups and researching what you can do in this situation. Ask somebody in your direct circle to be your long COVID support buddy and do these things for you. Because if it is too much, that is the best next option. And try to really find doctors that want to work with you and not over you. if you know what I mean. You need a physician or a specialist that really has a certain respect for you as a patient and about your experience. And even if it's a doctor who says to you, I don't know what to do, as long as this doctor is willing to review what you've found out and to decide if any of those things are an option for you. Like I have patients telling me, my GP is useless in the sense that he knows nothing about long COVID, but I can present him my options that I found out in support groups that might be able to improve my situation. I can show them to him. He decides, or he can tell me if they are an option, if they are safe, if I can try them, and he can help me get to them. And many patients say that they prefer a doctor like that to a doctor that doesn't do his research and has no idea and just dismisses their problems. And it's sad to me that that is our next best thing, because I would wish for every patient to have a doctor like I have, where I can say, I have this problem, what can we do about it? And he can give me a few possibilities and explain to me how the different possibilities work. And then we can decide together what I want to try first. And that is how your relationship with your doctor should be. If it isn't, please don't hesitate to change doctors. It's a very, in many cases, it's a very necessary step if you are able to. I know in some countries it's not possible to change your GP, but if you have the option, do it for sure.
we spoke about your journey. We spoke a little bit about the situation in Austria right now, but also in general about how they look into long COVID, what they do and don't do with long COVID. And obviously we spoke about what long COVID is, but just to wrap this interview and to wrap up your episode, describe to me in just a couple of sentences, what does long COVID mean?
That's a big question.
Big question.
It feels like somebody sort of really dismantles your whole being, bodily and also mentally, and puts it back together in the wrong way. And you have no idea how it happened. And you don't function like you should. And the person that was there before, you try and you try, but you can't find that person anymore. I mean, you are there, definitely, but it doesn't work the same way. And I think, I mean, it's a very difficult job to try and figure out which pieces belong where and how to put yourself back together again. I think that's for me, that's sort of what it feels like. Yeah, it's also the worst thing I have ever experienced. But it's also something that has taught me a lot of things about myself, about the world, about our society, how things work. But I think a humbling experience comes pretty close to to describing it.
Maarte, really, thank you very much. Like I said before, it's not a very nice topic. Long COVID, it's not nice, but it needs to be talked about. And I'm very happy to have spoken to you. It has been a pleasure. And I really wish you all the best.
Likewise.